Welcome everyone to what is technically episode 2 of the RPG Maker General podcast from your friends at 4chan. I am Marpix, aka Cody, and then I have with me my lovely friends.
Hey, how's it going? Fucking hell, Red Mage. Why are you going to like that?
You go ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Thank you. Just all I ask for is a bit of respect. I'm not saying you have to treat me like I'm the only reason people listen to this podcast, but I wouldn't mind it. Just a bit of the reverence I'm due. A little bit of reverence. Not a lot. Not as much as the word reverence might suggest. Just a bit. My name is Windsor. I make games. I use RPG Maker once. Made a game. I wasted all my good material on the previous episode 2 that we did that we had to scrap because the audio was unusable, and now I don't want to redo my good jokes I came up with because it would feel disingenuous. So I'm gonna scrape by. I'm gonna do my best. I'll still probably be the best part of the podcast because what fucking competition do I have? But if you guys want to take this opportunity to step it up, I am at my most vulnerable right now.
Understood.
Okay, good luck beating that introduction, Red Mage.
Yeah, for real. I go by Red Mage or White Fog. I introduced myself a little bit on the first one, but yeah, basically I think I'm the eldest game creation RPG guy here, considering I started with RPG Maker 95 for the PC, so.
Yeah, sounds pretty accurate.
Yeah. Resident old guy.
Yeah, this guy's the grizzled veteran of RPG Maker.
Used everything from 95 up.
Yep, I haven't touched MV yet, and I think that's and then RPG Maker 3 for PS2 or PS1, no PS2. But I have played with 1 and 2, and actually RPG Maker 1 for the PS1 has my first and I think only completed game, but I don't have the memory cards that had it anymore, so it is lost to time.
Oh, what a shame. Oh, that's right. I forgot to show my series. So I'm working in PS1 RPG Maker right now. And
nice.
I have a series on YouTube called Defeat the Darkness, which is basically a game in RPG Maker PS1 that I threw up there and added cheesy voice acting and sound effects to. It's good. I recommend it because I made it. But with that anyway, let's start the actual round of questioning here. So, Mr. Red Mage, being the grizzled veteran you are, what got you into game design?
Honestly, I'm not even really sure. It's been over 20 years. You know, RPG Maker 95. Well, you know, we'll just let that sink in a minute. That was 21 years ago. I remember being on our family computer, and I think I was just, and this was, long before I discovered 4chan. I don't even know if 4chan was around in the 90s. I honestly don't even know. But I was on some website. I saw somebody mention this RPG Maker thing, and like the first games I grew up playing were Final Fantasy 1 and Dragon Quest. So I was like, oh, I can make my own game? This is the best. And so I found it, and it was all in Japanese. It wasn't even translated yet. So
wow.
I had no idea what anything really did. But I still messed around with it and made a game, and I don't think my Skype icon is anymore, but I'm a huge fan of John Talbane of Darkstalkers, and I was at the time then, I think. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I just really liked werewolves. Anyway, there's a werewolf character in RM95 that you can use, and he was the main character, and you fought against tiger people, and that's like literally all I remember about that game. But it was great, and I enjoyed it, and that pretty much kept me like messing around with that, and then I kind of dropped off, and then when 2000 came out, and then the Age of Alex came, that pretty much kind of solidified everything as far as that goes. But that's I think how I got into the game design originally. Was just I saw somebody mention it on a website, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I love RPGs. Let me make one.
All right. And for people who don't know, Alex is the main character of 2000 and 2003, I believe.
Yes, I think actually they rotated the characters for 2003. If I remember right, they picked somebody else as the main. But it's been a while since I messed with 2K3. But yeah, Alex is the brown-haired with the bandana character that is probably very familiar to anybody who's worked in RPG Maker. So
Alex is a big piece of shit. He's my enemy. And
he had so many things.
I should make him a troop in one of my games. You beat up Alex. But at the same time, that's a bit shit, and I don't think I'm going to do that. You guys, I had a great idea. Do you guys know the Shilkworm video?
The what?
There's this girl named Nyanas on YouTube, and she has this video where she pitches like a comedy skit where she's pretending to be an anime girl, and then she reveals that actually she has the lower body of a silkworm, and she goes, "I'm a silkworm. I'm going to produce a lot of silk." And she's just going, you know, I think this video would be really cool, and I think it would be cool if I was known as like the silkworm. And I was just thinking I should put like a silkworm in one of my RPGs. Like you meet this seductive anime girl who wants to smooch you, and you talk to her, and she's like, "I'm actually a silkworm," and then you have to fight her.
Oh, you know what? Just a way to hide her lower body. She could be like sick in bed, and a quest is to like get her something that makes her feel better. She wants to reward you with a kiss, and then BT Dubs Silkworm throws off the covers. Battle time.
Yes. Yes. Oh my god, dude.
Segueing into that, Mr. Windsor, how did you, our lovely little newbie, get into game design?
Oh, I moved to Ireland because I wanted to be with my best friend, and I couldn't get a job, and my parents were like, "Okay, we'll pay your rent for a bit, but only if you can get in college." And I thought, I can't get in college because I dropped out of high school. But I went to this game design interview for this game design course, and they were like, "So what are your skills?" And I just talked about frame data and Street Fighter for a long time, and they were like, "Wow, this guy knows his games. This guy knows his video games. Let's have him do it. Let's have him do video games." And I started doing it, and I did surprisingly well for a guy who dropped out of high school and didn't have any experience with making games. The first project was to make an RPG Maker game, and most people just spent like 5 hours on it, and it's really standard where you talk to the king and then you fight the dragon and you win the quest. And I made the opus of the RPG Maker medium. That is Jack and Joey Sort Their Shit Out, which I think we'll all agree is kind of a landmark in RPG Maker history.
I mean, I can't deny that I definitely enjoyed the game all the way through. So, and that's not something I can say about a lot of RPG Maker games. And I have played a lot of RPG Maker games. But no, I definitely did enjoy it all the way through.
See, I really appreciate that. And like, you had some very kind words to say about my game, and that's really one of the things that really made me feel like the whole process was worth it. Because I was kind of thinking to myself, this is just a school project. It doesn't need to be good. I can just make a shit game. And then you came along and you were like, no, this actually is a pretty good game, and I think you're onto something here. And like, that was, I feel like that's gonna be a big moment in my development, in my personal development as the greatest game developer of all time.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad I could be a stepping stone on your way to greatness.
That's what you'll be remembered for. When I make my autobiography, and everyone reads it, because at this point I'll just be a fucking global hero. And everyone's gonna know your name, not your actual name, but they're gonna know that there was a guy on 4chan who went by the Red Mage, and they're gonna think
statue. They're gonna make a statue for you in Ireland, Windsor, and you're gonna have all of your Kickstarter backers engraved on the base. But Red Mage will get his name on there for free.
Excellent.
I mean, he could if he didn't want to, donate to the Kickstarter, which he could do if he felt like it. I'm not gonna tell him not to.
Yeah. All right. So I got into game dev in a rather roundabout fashion. I played a lot of RPGs when I was younger. I played. I think my first RPG experience was with Secret of Mana, and then when I went to a GameStop, they had just re-released the Final Fantasy Legends series for Game Boy. So I ended up getting all three of them, and I loved them to death. And then I got into a couple Zelda games and some other things, and then found my way to Newgrounds on the internet. And there, I heard about RPG Maker, and this was after I had, played Secret of Mana and Final Fantasy. I'm like, oh my god, I'd love to make a game. And then I couldn't get it working for the life of me. So I gave up, and in about 8th grade, I heard about StarCraft. I started playing StarCraft a little bit, and then I found out you could make your own StarCraft maps, and several people had made RPGs in StarCraft. I'm like, holy crap, this is what I want to do. So I did that, and I made 2. I finished 2 that got put up there, and at the time, on Newgrounds, 8-bit D&D was one of the top videos, and it was the Dead Alewives sketch.
That's an excellent video. Yep.
Yeah.
That's an excellent video.
Yeah, with the I'm attacking the darkness. So my 12-year-old self, like, ooh, I can be so witty, I'm going to call my game Defeat the Darkness. And so I made that and its sequel, and then I wasted a bunch of time playing other people's games. And then fast forward to I was about 15, and I found RPG Maker for the PS1. And I got really acquainted with that because I had been spurned by actual coding kind of stuff, and by the one I found a long time ago. So I got into the PS1 version. I learned all of its ins and outs. I got really good with it, clickety-clack, and typing on a controller, inputting text with the controller. And
that was awful. I forgot about that.
Oh man, if you ever want to play a fighting game, it keeps you fresh, let me tell you.
Oh, I'm sure.
So that segues perfectly into my second question, which is why RPG Maker. And for me, I chose RPG Maker because I don't think God wanted me to program. I tried programming, and even like with JavaScript, they have on the website, hey, you can learn to type. You can learn to make a program that says "Hello World" right now. I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. And I did everything the instructions said, and it broke.
Nice.
And only 4 or 5 years later did I find out, that notification that always pops up when you boot up your computer, like, hey, JavaScript's ready to be updated. You should update your JavaScript. I was running an out-of-date version, which is why Hello Worlds didn't work, and why I gave up on my dream of typing things for a living.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't remember what it was, but it was actually semi-recently. I think it was something with Flash where it just wouldn't work and I couldn't figure it out. And then it's like, oh yeah, I haven't updated Flash in about a year. I should probably do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're not alone.
Oh, yeah. So, Red Mage, why RPG Maker? Was it just because it was the first one you found?
Mostly. Like I said, it's something where, because I started with 95 and I've played pretty much every iteration. I know it very, very well, ins and outs. And like I was telling, I think it was on the first podcast. I don't even remember if this part got recorded or not. But just as far as like the scripting goes, like I can't write a script to save my life. But if somebody gives me one, I can look at it, I can see what all the modules do, what all the classes do, see where all the script calls are, and completely repurpose it for what I need it to do. That's not a problem. But I can't like just create one if you give me a blank piece of paper. So that's part of the reason why I'm hesitant to jump on this MV train, only because it completely changes the whole scripting thing, which I know how to do. Yeah. So, but the main reason why is because it's easy and because it's accessible, and I am convinced, and it will be hard-pressed to convince me otherwise, that RPGs are the greatest like genre in video games, period, hands down, no exceptions. So I don't want to make a platformer. I don't want to make a sports game or a racing game or a shooter. I want to make RPGs. So hence, RPG Maker is the choice for me.
I just like fighting games. I think RPGs are shit, actually. I just want to make Street Fighter.
So were you required by your class to use RPG Maker?
Yeah. I mean, I wound up being really good at it, obviously, but yeah, that was the first assignment, and I thought I had to have it done by like the 1st of January, and it turns out we actually don't need to have it done till May, so I'm ahead of the curve, which I'm not upset about, because that just means when everyone else is doing it, I can just like laugh at them and jack off and show them, hey, look at what I'm doing. I bet you wish you weren't too busy to be doing this. And they'd be like, this is indecent exposure. I didn't ask to see that. And I'd be like, no, you love it.
So, I remember in our Lost episode, you mentioned that you don't like the fantasy setting. And so, since you got shoehorned into RPG Maker anyway, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. But I mean, I did make the most of it. Like, I managed to avoid using the fantasy setting as much as I could. But I think largely just because when I got the game on Steam, I got like this Earthbound tile set free as a DLC, and so I thought, you know, I'm dreadful at drawing. I can do character sprites, but like tile sets and background elements are just fucking French to me. So like. So I can just use those, and I get away with it for myself. Like I let myself get away with it because I hate the default RPG Maker assets. They put me off playing a game, but like not every game on Steam uses these ones, even though they were provided by the RPG Maker company, and they took zero effort on my part to use. They don't make it look like every other free RPG Maker game on Steam. So I'm pleased as punch. I think my game's great. Even though I know I didn't try very hard when I was making it, I still think it's great.
Now, Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the game itself, like it's got like its potential is very high as it sits now. I mean, there's definitely room for improvement, but I mean, just as a quick game that you made, you know, it is very good, and it has that potential. You just, now that you've got the time, you can expound on that and make it even better, or you can, you know, continue with your fighting stock stuff that you were making there in the thread.
Oh my god, did you see that? I would have made it good if that assignment wasn't due next Tuesday. Like, I would have actually spent a few hours and not like 20 minutes drawing those if I didn't have to have it done like now.
Okay, because I was worried like you would just be a lazy asshole and you wouldn't know how to you jump from success to success. You know, I'm always scared of that. I would hate to be a one-hit wonder. It's like, okay, I made the greatest thing I'm ever going to make at 25. Now what the hell do I do?
I'm going to be honest. I've been thinking about my next RPG Maker game just because hanging out in rpgmg gave me the itch to keep doing it. I don't remember exactly what it was, but something got me drawing graphics again. And I was like, well, I've got all these new graphics. It would be a dreadful shame if I didn't put them in a video game. And so that's why I started work on Game 2 in the Get Your Shit Together quadrilogy, I guess. I don't know how many games there are going to be. And I don't think Jack and Joey's Shag Venture is like a canonical part of the saga. I'm definitely not calling it that when I release it, but the working title for my sex simulator is Jack and Joey's Shag Venture. But the one I'm working on now, I was conceptualizing it. I've written out the whole plot, and I've got a bunch of like graphics and dialogue and like music planned out, and I started doing areas, and then I was just reading over the skeleton, and I started thinking, I don't think this is as good as the original. I don't think people are going to enjoy this as much, and like maybe there's no point even making it. So, like, I imagine that's a worry a lot of people go through, and it's hard to say how you should take that, because, like, if you realize in the planning stages this actually isn't that good, then maybe it's a sign that you need to, change it. But at the same time, like, I think we're all worried. Like, everyone is worried that the thing that they're working on and producing and committing a lot of time and energy to isn't going to be worth it. Like, I think that's a natural fear that everybody experiences.
Yeah.
So, like, currently my plan is to keep working on it and make it the best I possibly can. And, like, even if it's not good, having another finished product is a good thing. And having a finished product that you aren't proud of is ultimately a good thing, because it'll encourage you to remedy the mistakes you made this time around. But, like, there's always that nagging fear that, like, okay, I made this great game. Maybe now I've just lost the ability to produce good things. Like, maybe it just escaped me.
Well, you gotta, like, kind of, to run off that a little bit, too. I mean, even if you're in that state of mind, you still have to push forward. I mean, if you look at, what used to be the greatest gaming series of all time, Final Fantasy, it is no longer, by a long stretch, but Final Fantasy VII was amazing. Yeah. It was like, it blew everybody away, and 8 was a huge disappointment.
But to 8's credit, it was still highly experimental. They were still trying to push the envelope. But unfortunately, there's only I view, like, being successful creatively like shooting a basket in basketball. There are a million ways to throw the ball wrong, and there's only a few ways to throw it right.
Yeah, I can dig it.
Yeah, so, like, if you've already, like, gotten a basket behind your back, now do you try and do it on one foot? Is that going to be even as impressive,
Right.
And then you have 9 where it's like, we're just shooting baskets. This is back to basics, man.
Yep, 9 was extremely back to basics.
Yeah.
But with that, though, now in the years that have passed and people are looking back at 8, a lot of people are starting to really like it and start to pick it up again. So, I mean, even if when you release the second part of your quadrilogy, if it's not well received at first, it might be looked on favorably later on. Like,
vindicated
no
by
lie.
history.
Right. I mean, no lie. Final Fantasy II is one of my favorites out of all the games, despite the bad rap that it got originally, just because it's so different from 1.
You mean the bad rap it continues to get because it's quote-unquote open world just means you will die to things 5 times your level if you go the wrong direction?
Yeah.
Happened
to Dragon Warrior 2. But it's just the way that the game is presented, and the plot is actually really, really strong in the game. People are just put off by the way that the leveling system works, and the fact that if you wander in the wrong direction, you're insta dead. But just don't wander that way the next time. But
so that's something I take issue with modern games. Not to get too far off topic, but in older games, the concept of failure was real. You were supposed to die and learn and then try something else. You weren't supposed to get it on the first try.
Exactly. And now that's kind of fallen to the wayside. You've just got the retry, and you put back in the battle, or you put back, just a little bit from where the fail came.
Yeah, and
do you guys ever play I Want to Be the Guy?
Yes.
I fucking love I Want to Be the Guy. I really enjoy it. No, I'm not joking. I really enjoy that game. I think it like, the level design is incredibly creative. And the difficulty's, like, unfair, but ultimately it's a learning experience. Like, the reason you walk into things and die is so you know not to do them next time. Ultimately, it's the origin story of Batman. Like, why do we fall, Master Wayne?
So we can get back up.
Thank you. Thank you for doing the English accent. I couldn't have managed without you.
No, that was my bad Batman. Hold on. So we can get back up. There we go. That's the Christian Bale I was looking for.
But it's not Christian Bale, it's Michael Caine who says that. I fed you an excuse to do your incredible English accent, and you just fucking spat it on the ground.
Oh, I thought Christian Bale was, like, replying to him, but apparently I'm wrong. I'm just an idiot.
He was a child when he said that. It was a child actor. He wasn't even that into bats yet, so he hadn't started doing the bat voice.
Oh.
Yeah.
I suppose it'd be kind of hard for a 5-year-old to do that voice. Oh, jeez.
Man, none of us are ready for this, man. That young Christian Bale voice. That scene they recorded 20 years in the past when Christian Bale was in his child years. They just filmed it way in advance for the fucking Batman movies they knew Christopher Nolan was going to direct when he'd, gotten out of college and become a director.
They'd have to go back a little bit further than 20 years. Ever heard of American Psycho?
No.
Do you like Huey Lewis? Anyhow. Okay, so a question that I really wanted to ask you guys. I'm a student of Sid Field, and I say that because I've bought basically all of his books and read them. He's a guy that writes a lot about film. He was a screenwriter, and he really helped me find a good formula for making my web series, because film is very similar to video games, especially when you have a plot that you want to run from start to finish. There are ways to make stories work no matter what genre you're writing for. Mm-hmm. And for film, there's two things. You have your characters and you have your plot, which means, does the plot guide the characters or do the characters guide the plot? But I feel that for video games as well as television and books, things that run a long time, I think there's also a lot of world building that goes in. Yes. So when you design your games, do you make up the world first and fill it with characters and meaning and plot? Did you think of your plot first and then throw characters in that fit it? Or did you have a bunch of characters lying around and decide to throw them in a blender and see what happened? So personally, when I thought up Defeat the Darkness, I had a plot. I had a plot that I knew I wanted to do, and every character that is in the series is a result of making that plot move forward. And the world was basically thrown together on paper and sticky notes because it needed to just kind of work.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Like if this cave was too early, I took the cave sticky note and I moved it further back. That's literally how Defeat the Darkness happened.
Nice. Okay. See, I hear all the time about like people and their design documents and in these ideas, and even something as basic as that is still more advanced than what I do. My approach is entirely character driven. As a writer, character driven fiction is the most important thing. If you can't care about the characters, you don't care about the plot. That's kind of how I've always approached like everything that I do, writing, game making, all that stuff. If your characters aren't interesting, nobody's going to care about what happens beyond it, even if it's the best reveal of all time. And so my approach is kind of actually something that I believe it was what Stephen King had said at some point, where basically like when I'm writing, and it works a little bit differently for game creation because there's a lot more involved than just writing some words. My characters just kind of happen, and the world itself kind of blossoms around them. Like I have nothing planned for the world except for like their starting area. I have nothing planned for the plot except for like the beginning and the end. I don't know how they get there. I just know that they do. And as I write, I let the characters write the story themselves. Like their interactions, and something will happen, and it's all organic. I'm as amazed as the characters are as things are happening because I don't plan anything in advance. And it's the same way I run my D&D games. I plan like a few key points, but everything else in the middle completely made up on the spot because it's so much more fluid that way. It doesn't feel as rigid and structured and that kind of thing to me. So that's how I approached all that.
So if this were NaNoWriMo, you'd be a pantser.
I've done NaNoWriMo for like 6 or 7 years now, so yeah, I'm pretty hardened veteran to throwing down 50,000. It's like, all right, so just to kind of put it into perspective, when I was in No, I just graduated from high school. So in 2004, I was a part of a Dragon Ball Z roleplay site. All right?
Yes.
And the more words you wrote, the stronger your character was. I wrote about 15,000 words over the course of a weekend. Okay, that's my biggest claim to fame. But like, I was averaging like a good 20 to 30,000 words a week. So NaNoWriMo is pretty, not that difficult. Granted, I can't have as much mundane things. I think I wrote at one point, there was an arm wrestling match that lasted about 10,000 words. Obviously, I can't use something like that for a book, but putting thought to paper is easy peasy.
Cody, tell us about your role-playing backgrounds.
Okay,
This is what we're doing now.
oh god, let's see here. Where do I begin? Where do I end? So, I did not completely grasp what role-playing was about when I was younger. I didn't quite see the point. I had friends that did it, I occasionally made characters, but my role-playing was, began and ended at Neopets.
Nice.
So they had those like they had the chat rooms, and it was a lot like 4chan, where if you kept getting replies, your thread would keep moving up, but if it got down to like 26 or so, it was just deleted and gone forever. So all of my role-playing experience was basically things that were, for an hour or two on Neopets, and like, there was one time a girl wanted to roleplay with me Final Fantasy VII, and we started fighting some guards or whatever. Like, we were breaking into the Midgar reactor, and I literally like took my turn. Like, I said Cloud's turn, and then I do this, and then like the girl's just like, well, I'm beating the crap out of the guards. It's like, but what about damage and stuff? Okay, whatever. She just does that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I back then I was more into systems than I was characters, and that's still kind of the case. Like, I think a friend tried to get me into like Harry Potter role playing at one point, and I made
that.
Do what now?
So I did that.
Yeah, and like I made a character. I was definitely a mudblood because I didn't like the purebloods, and like everyone who role played a pureblood was an asshole. But I guess that was the point. Kind of, yeah. Yeah. So, I wish I could tell you more, but I have several friends who roleplay, and they really get into characters and stuff. So, there you go. I was bad at the end. Windsor!
Bring it on. Well, you know me. Like, I do a bit of the old schoolgirl teacher roleplay. Sometimes I'm a doctor, and she's my patient, But, for serious, let's keep it real now for a second, you guys. Yeah, I was active on the internet for a while. One time I was a Pokemon. I think I was a Trico, and the other lads were like, it was a mystery dungeon roleplay. So like, I always liked the mystery dungeon setting much better than the. I'd rather be a Pokemon than enslave a bunch of Pokemon. And aside from that, there was this. I was on the Escapist magazine forums for a while, which most people recognize just because it hosts zero punctuation. But anyway, there was this one among the role-playing community. There was this one roleplay that was like legendary because the GM, who's an IRL friend of mine at this point. I had a threesome with him and his girlfriend once. Anyway, he kind of abandoned the thread about 10 pages in, and somehow, through sheer force of will, it kept going for another 50 pages and had a really satisfying conclusion. Like, it had a beginning... Nice. This RP had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we, on that forum, we spent years trying to recapture that magic. And you know what they say about lightning in a bottle, man? It doesn't strike twice in a bottle.
It's true.
Like, so I was involved in a couple of them, and I was always well liked because I'm good at writing. I don't need to tell you guys that, and I'm good at character development. So I was always involved and like well liked, but that's the one thing I really remember about that forum is that we had the one RP that was really good, and then we never we never got that magic back, and it was like being in a loveless relationship. Like, you just keep trying to recapture the. And I wasn't involved in that original thread. I just read it, and I was like, this was a really enjoyable read, and I would love to be involved in something like this, but you can't force it, man.
Yep.
If it's not, if it's not happening, you can't force it.
Yeah, like the one of the very first. Well, I guess it wasn't very first because I was 18, 19 by that point. I mean, this is just kind of it's dead now, so I guess it's not even really shilling. But there was a Harvest Moon board.
Oh man!
And it was honestly like, because nowadays it seems like because I still look to see if there's any fun RP boards out there, and everything is so clique-ish. Like, there's always these groups of people, and they don't play with anybody else but people within their own group, and so the new people show up, and they have nobody to play with, and so then they just leave.
Oh man!
So, but this Maple Village board, the admin, like the mayor, if there was a thread that was open for like 3 days and nobody responded, he would personally respond to it and like bring everybody together. And it was seriously like the single best board I've ever been a part of, and then he had to, move on to be a real person and not just just a filthy role player. And so the board died. But that magic has never been, like, the people who were part of that board have tried several times to like resurrect similar ideas, and it just keeps falling apart. So definitely understand.
Rest in peace.
We're like well fucking off topic by this point.
Yeah, but nonetheless, thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about the time I fucked my best mate's girlfriend and the time I dressed a girl up as a medical patient and then stuck my fingers in her.
Video games. So we can comfortably segue into this next part then, if you'd like.
Go ahead. I mean, I'm not done talking about my sexual prowess, but I'm sure I'll find more opportunities, whatever we move on to.
I'm sure there will be a podcast for that eventually. So, what I'd like to ask you guys, if you have a most interesting character, who are they, and what inspired you to make them? I really like this kind of stuff because most characters that have that kind of depth are based off someone or something that's real, and I love that kind of stuff.
Now we're talking like games that we're making, I assume, right? Not just in general.
Oh yes. The most interesting character you've made for a game, yeah.
For a game, okay. In my proof of concept, which fucking at this point is going to be like an hour to 2 hour demo, so it's long past proof of concept. But there's 6 characters that are all playable. And each of them is interesting in their own way, but my personal favorite out of all of them is this. There's a lady who, she's kind of like the one that starts you moving through the plot, and you actually don't play as one of these 6 characters, which is kind of interesting too. But anyway, but she's a fortune teller, and to the point where, like, the people who make the jokes, if you have any like hardcore D&D friends where they roll the D20 to decide like what they're gonna do that day, like that's kind of how she lives her whole life. She like tarots out everything. Do I do this or do I do this? Should I do this or should I do that?
So she's a bit like Two-Face, but with more variables.
Yeah, kinda actually.
That's cool.
And hang on, let me pull up her event. The event to recruit her is 13 pages, which is the longest event page that I've got in anything, because there's a lot that you have to do, and there's a lot of waiting involved, because basically when you rest, what it does is it generates like a random number, and that determines her fortune for the day. And so you've got to like be lucky to get that fortune that inspires her to come with you.
Oh, so she has to feel like it that day.
Well, the cards have to tell her to that day, because it doesn't matter whether she feels like it or not. If the cards don't say to, she's not coming.
And it's actually randomized.
Yes, yeah. Basically, whenever you rest, it creates a it stores a random number in a variable, and that's why she's got so many pages.
Man, I love everything I hear about your game.
It's getting close to being done. I have 3 to 4 more maps to make, and that's about it. And the enemies themselves are pretty much all generated. Then some balancing, but beyond that, I'm almost done. It should hopefully be done sometime tomorrow or Friday, at worst case next week. The demo will be out.
Awesome. Do you want to shill it now, or did you want to shill it later?
It still doesn't have a name. It's still called Proof of Concept. There's not really anything to shill right now. Basically, the main premise is, and kind of getting back to like that question on like what inspired the character, switching it to what inspired this game is, and I was talking about this, I think, before we even started the first podcast with Gabe and Windsor and Soul, but I've taken the Pokemon Essentials engine that you normally use to create Pokemon games, and I've completely changed it, refitted it, done everything different, so it doesn't look at all like a Pokemon game. It doesn't play at all like a Pokemon game, but it still uses that same battle system because I couldn't find anything that was that similar, because I hate, just like Windsor hates the default RTP, I really don't like fight, skills, defend, items, run. I hate that. So this gives you two to four different attacks that you can use that all do different things, and you swap them out as you level up. So it just kind of creates a more interesting thing. I mean, you can still mash the main button and just keep spamming the attack, but if you do that in the final boss, you're going to get your shit wrecked. So that's kind of the premise I started with, but it's there's nothing similar at all anymore to it. That's Pokemon. It still is using resources that I've taken from another game, but those will be updated once the proof of concept comes out, and if everybody is like, hey, this is actually pretty fun, I'm like, cool, now I can actually put effort into it.
They will be legally distinct when it matters.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so Windsor, what about the favorite character you've made? Now, I remember we talked earlier, like through text chat, and you said you've been on a girl kick lately, and it sounds to me like you put a lot more effort into your girl characters than your male characters.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Like, if I run down my male characters, I don't tend to talk a lot about the details of my game, because I assume everyone's played it, and, like, fair enough, why wouldn't you? It's a fucking masterpiece. But I feel like I should, so, I think I talked about Jack a bit in either the thread or on the podcast. I believe it was the thread, so I'll go into it here. If it wasn't the thread and it was the podcast, there's a 50-50 chance that footage is lost forever, so I'll just fucking go for it. Yeah, Jack was my main character, and he's the last character I designed, and I was coming up with the whole plot of the game, and I was making all the assets, and this guy, I was just hitting a complete block. I didn't know what he was like in terms of his appearance or in terms of his personality. I just knew what his role in the plot was going to be, and that kind of inspired me to make, because at this point I hated him. I didn't like Jack. He was halting my progress on making the game, and he's the main character, as I mentioned. So I disliked him, and I thought I can do something with that. And I ventured to make Jack the most unlikable RPG protagonist character ever. And that became a plot point, because it turns out his girlfriend loses interest in him because he's such a default human being. And as I was making the game, I ended up giving him a bit more of a personality than that, and I ended up kind of growing to like him because he wound up being a bit more interesting than he initially was. But and that kind of screwed up the end twist of the game, because he's not really boring. He's I would describe him as a twat more than a boring twat.
Yeah.
But my favorite character, all the others are simple. All the other male characters are very simple in terms of their design, and they're all kind of not that interesting in terms of their personality compared to, my favorite character in my first game, which is Ribbon, who I love. I absolutely adore Ribbon, because she's like a short, fat, kind of bitchy girl who talks about getting fucked a lot. The reason Ribbon exists is because I was trying to come up with my, with the perfect waifu for me, and I came up with her, and I thought, this character's good. I'm going to put her in a video game, and I did.
She doesn't.
And
She's not wearing any clown makeup though.
That's true. Second game incoming. Fucking just you wait on the clown makeup.
Okay, I'm ready.
Doesn't sound like she'd be willing to dress up as a nurse either. If anything, she'd be the doctor or the mortician. Lord, I apologize.
But yeah, no, she's good. And then I have a couple of other characters in my incoming game that are pretty cool. Like Ribbon's oldest sister is one whose design I really like, and also a few people have told me they really like compared to the other designs. And I'm not going to say too much about her, I guess, but I guess she is something to look forward to in my next masterpiece that not even I am confident is going to be good. So that should fucking fill you with excitement.
I am. I'm looking forward to whatever you put out next.
Can you surpass your previous effort? Next time on RPG Maker Z.
I'm gonna make that the tagline. Fucking Jack and Joey 2. Not even Windsor thinks it's good. That's the subtitle.
Beautiful. So, the most interesting character in my game, I think it's a tie, and it's basically between the two characters that the party meets halfway through the game. So, spoiler alert: a village gets destroyed because it's a bloody RPG, and there are two survivors technically. You have Milia, who was not in the village at the time but was a resident, and then you have Jethro, who was there and was spared by the big bad guy, Dark Dagon, but he gets corrupted by the power of darkness to be useful later for Dark Dagon's evil deeds. And as I've said before, I am a systems guy, not a character guy. And I have had to put so much thought into these characters. Because I put them in a very unique situation, you know, like... spoilers if you're going to watch the show, but so their town gets attacked, but the entire video game is played completely straight, as in there was never a finished or complete town to begin with. It existed the second the camera pans onto it, and it's gone. And there's a lot of character growth for Milia because it gets revealed to her a couple episodes down, like, you know, her town didn't exist. Well, she kind of realizes it more like, and she there's some other complications that I won't get into, but basically, the way I'm writing the ending now is her coming to terms with this and trying to figure out what can be done, you know, living in this game world, and then her friend Jethro is not with the main party after a while because of things. But he has also been a lot of trouble to flesh out because he is also in that same boat, but he hates people.
Fair enough.
Yeah, he's been corrupted by the power of darkness, and he's not a reasonable person, but he has that same issue. And having them in the same situation, but dealing with it different ways, I find very interesting.
Yeah, that is a really interesting, like just conceptually, because like as a player, when you're playing a game, you get to the town, you know, to you it's new, but it's something that should have existed, for many years, or whatever, in the game world. But the fact that it and probably I assume all of its inhabitants did not exist until they were put on screen.
Yeah,
that's a very interesting way to spin it.
Yeah, it's a really cool way, like combining gameplay and the story. You know what else was good for that? RPG Maker masterpiece, Undertale.
It's true.
The game that we're all striving to recreate in our own way. Because we want to get that Undertale money too.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Oh,
I mean... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Toby, if you're listening, hit us up. Splash some of that Undertale cash our way. I do anal. Just thought I'd better get that out there.
Oh man, if I'm gonna go for that audience, I need to put more anthropomorphic characters in there, man. All my people are human.
Yeah, right now I think I've got entirely humans. Which is not to say, because I have grand plans for this game of mine, because what I'd like to do, and this is something that's been building in the back of my mind since I've been working on it, is I want to tell like a whole bunch of different stories that are all set like in this world, because the basic premise is, which is inspired, and I put this in thread, by Final Fantasy VI, where halfway through the game you lose and the world gets like all blown to crap and back, and you've got to try to like travel the world, put your team back together, and finally confront the end boss again. So what the plot that's going on in the game as it stands right now is they're not really aware of it because they're just random townspeople. They don't really know what's going on. But heroes had gone. There's big bad evil wizard, fairly generic, and they had gone to try and stop him, and they fail.
Ooh.
And then the world is then whatever spell he was casting, like just completely shatters the world, which everybody refers to it as the break. It happened at some point. Nobody really knows except for the people who knew the heroes or who knew the big bad wizard, what caused it. All they know is that all of a sudden the world's broken. And the party is basically in an inn, and you're the innkeeper. That's your role in the game, is you're the innkeeper. And your inn somehow manages to survive this thing. Like all the rest of the houses around you are like broken in pieces. Your inn is perfectly untouched. So basically anybody who was staying at your inn is okay, and they survived. And so you're basically running out of food, water, wood for the fire and that kind of thing. So you've got to gather the posse of these survivors and who are not warriors, who are not really designed to be fighting these things, and try to get enough stuff to survive is the basic premise for this one. But then I'm like, I kind of want to do a game set in this world about those heroes who failed, or what happened after they failed. And so I've been coming with all these different scenarios, just exploring this world. So I'm kind of thinking I'm making like a bunch of 4 to 5 hour games about this world, just from different characters' point of views. So I think what I'm going to do eventually.
I like the sound of that, man. I'm really looking forward to playing that. Listen, check out this hot picture of Jerry Han I found. We can use this as the picture for the podcast, so like people listening can see it. It's good, man. She looks good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Looks good.
I don't want to get us kicked off YouTube again.
Yeah, again.
All right. So with that, it's been about 55 minutes. If you guys have anything you'd like to shill real quick before we log off, please go ahead.
I think. I know we're 2 podcasts in, but honestly, at this point, I think everyone knows about my game. Like, I think I've mentioned it enough. And you know where you can find me. I'm Sam Gladwin IRL on Twitter. The link to the games in my little description. Like, you can play it if you want to. I think it's okay. My second one won't be as good, so if you want to get the prime Windsor content, like, that's where you want to go.
He has to remember to say that it's called Jack and Joey Get It Together.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right. So, obviously, I'm Marpix. I've been on rpgmg for a long while. My web series is called Defeat the Darkness, youtube.com/user/253entertainment, or defeatthedarkness.tumblr.com. There we go.
Oh, that was like practiced. I like that. Red Mage /White Fog, depending on where you know me from. And I'm not gonna shill anything of my own because I don't have anything of my own yet. But I bet the last one, put out a game there for everybody to check out. Another one on Steam. I'm pretty sure it was made with RPG Maker. I'm actually not sure, but it plays like one, so it's close enough anyway. It's called Artifact Adventure. very fun, very interesting game, very, very much 8-bit old school style. You build a party of 4, based on these different classes, so it's kind of like Final Fantasy 1. But there's a lot of really interesting things in it. Like, at the beginning of the game, you can go to, like, a slaver and sell off your party members if you want to make the game harder. which is awesome. And nobody has magic. Nobody has magic throughout the game. You find these artifacts throughout the game that, maybe like a weak fire spell or an AoE fire spell or buff strength or, heal spell, whatever they do. And you basically have whoever you want to have that spell use that artifact. So you can build your own party based around what you've already gotten set up. So it's a really fun game. There's like 3 different main plot lines, so you kind of have to play through the game. No, there's 4. I'm sorry, 4 times to see everything. I put 95 hours into it, fully completed.
It's
really,
too many
really
hours,
fun game. Man. It's a fun game. I really, really enjoyed it. I was genuinely surprised how much I enjoyed it. But yeah, that's Artifact Adventure. If anybody's looking for something to do when they're bored,
all right.
That's all I got to show.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time for the RPG Maker General podcast.
See you later.